everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of the She Is Unleashed podcast, the space where faith driven women in leadership come to break free from the chains that are holding them back and step fully into their God given power and destiny. I'm your host, Dr. Miriam Knight, licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Ohio, as well as in a small little country called Lesotho. And today we are going to explore the question that you might have been thinking about that has maybe crossed your mind more than once. I know it's crossed mine several times. What are we being unleashed to? We're being freed to something. We're being delivered to something. And I want us to talk about this a little bit today. So, you've begun this journey of unveiling of your true self, and you're starting to shed all the layers and to recognize the chains that have been holding you back. But now what? What does it mean to live life unleashed? What does it look like? These are questions that I've asked myself many times, and I'm sure I'm not alone. When we start on a journey to being unleashed, which we talked about in the last episode, we recognize that this is not an easy journey. And it's so important that we have a vision of the destination towards which we are working towards. Before we can fully embrace our unleashed selves, we need to have a vision of what that looks like. Proverbs 29, verse 18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." In other words, without a clear vision, we wander around aimlessly, unsure of where we're going or why. I was listening to a podcast or a message the other day by Marshawn Evans Daniels, and this is something that she said. She said, "We create chaos when our vision is unclear, when we are double minded, when there's instability in our minds regarding where we're going and what we want to see happen in our lives." The lack of vision, the lack of clarity, the broken results that we see in our lives are a result of broken vision. It's a result of us not having clarity regarding where we're going, what our destination is. I remember a time in my life when I felt like I was just going through the motions. Actually, I can remember several moments, and I believe I'm not the only one, where I was busy, constantly moving, but I didn't really feel like I had clarity regarding where I was going today or what I wanted to accomplish today. Now, found in seasons of my life when I lose sight of vision, when I lose sight of what I'm working towards, that in those moments, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of confusion in my life. In those moments, I find myself just dabbling in things and engaging in things that are pointless and not working towards that destination. And especially when you're in this unleashing journey, it is so necessary that you have clarity regarding what your vision is, because if you don't, you will find yourself not being able to persist through the trauma, through the pain, through the struggle of this unleashing journey. Because we mentioned this last week that this is not an easy thing. When you are undoing brokenness, when you are undoing trauma, when you are dealing with the bondages in your life that come from mental, emotional, and spiritual bondage, it can be so easy to fall into a place of complacency and saying, okay, I'm just going to accept that this is my fate. There's nothing better out there for me. This is just what my life is meant to be, because the pain is taking over. It wasn't until I personally took the time to really seek God's vision and ask God to realign me and recalibrate my life that things began to change. And for many of us, myself included, recalibration, realignment is not a once-off thing. It is something that we have to consistently allow God to do in our lives. Once God clarified his vision for my life, everything else started to fall into place. And there are many moments when life just comes and stands in the way, and we find ourselves again wandering aimlessly. God has to constantly call us back and recalibrate. And it's so important, and we'll talk about this later on, that we are intentional in making sure that we set the tone for our days, we set the tones for our week, we set the tone and are very intentional in how we want to live our lives out in alignment with his vision for our lives. Direction, purpose, and a clear sense of what we are being unleashed to. Understanding that, defining that starts with us, first of all, saying, What is my definition of success? And for many of us, we have to redefine what success means and what God is saying success means for us. Success is not the accumulation of wealth and possessions and relationships and status and power. It is our ability to successfully accomplish the assignment and the mission that God had in mind when He created us. Remember, y'all, we were created for His pleasure. We were created with a specific intention in mind. When we have vision, when we have perspective regarding our destination, we have to make sure that that perspective is aligned with God's perspective regarding our lives, God's perspective for our future, not our own. For many of us, we're struggling right now because we're fighting for this thing. The Bible says that many of us are discontent and disgruntled and unhappy in our hearts because even when we ask for things from God, we ask it with selfish motives and selfish. Our agenda is not aligned with His agenda. And so we feel like God is not answering our prayers. We feel like He's not responding to our cries because we fail to recognize that God's purposes and His intentions are much bigger and higher than anything we can conceive in our own minds. And we have to literally submit and align ourselves to Him every single moment of the day and ask God, Lord, am I in alignment? Am I really understanding what your heart is regarding the situation, no matter how hard it may seem? Once you have a vision, the next step, again, is to define what success looks like. Here's the thing: success in the world's eyes often looks very different from what is in God's eyes. The world might tell us that success is about wealth, status, and power, but God's definition of success is rooted in obedience, faithfulness, and living out His purposes for our lives. In Joshua 1, verse 8, God says, "Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." Notice that God ties success to obedience to His word. True success isn't about what we achieve by the world's standards. It's about how closely we align with our lives with God's will for our lives. For a long time, I measured my success by external achievements. It was one degree after the other, one job after the other. I was literally climbing the ladder of success. And I came to this moment of realization that if I stayed on this train, I would go very far. I would make all the money. I would do all the things and go all the places. Like I was on that train. But I recognized that there was a disgruntlement in my spirit saying, no, there's something more that God has called me to. And more doesn't necessarily mean more money, more accumulation, more status, more power. There is more that is within me that God is seeking to unleash: giftings, talents, the ability to connect with people, His purpose, more of His heart, more of His nature, more of His character that was within me, that was just waiting to be unleashed. And the Bible says in Romans chapter 8 that creation is waiting for the manifestation of the sons and daughters of God, that it is literally groaning, waiting for your true identity in God to be unleashed into this world. Now, I could have stayed on that train and I could have gone again very far in terms of my profession, in terms of success according to the world. But when I started to redefine what success looks like according to God's standard, I found that there was a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace that came from saying, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. So, what are some key questions that we need to consider when we're trying to unveil our purpose, our destination, our vision of what God is unleashing us to? Here's number one: what gifts has God given me? God has uniquely equipped each of us with specific gifts and talents. What are yours? I want you to actually hit pause right now and take a moment to write down what are the gifts and talents that God has given you, and how are you using these gifts and these talents to serve others and glorify Him. I'm reminded of the parable that talks about the servants, the three servants that were given different talents, and how they used those talents, and how two of them multiplied the talents and expanded their reach and their impact. And then the one didn't use what God had given him because he felt like what he had was too small compared to what the others had. And so he hid his gift. And the response of the king, when the servants gave feedback to the king, was, "You selfish and ungrateful servant. Why, if you knew that I was this mean king, if your perception of me was that I was this mean king that forces you to do things and takes things from people, like, And a lot of times, our ability to walk in alignment with God's vision for our lives is also tied to our perception and our understanding of His heart and His mind towards us. And when it is distorted and when it is not in alignment with truth, we find ourselves not operating out of a place of gratitude and appreciation for the things that He's placed within our hands, because we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And we're constantly feeling like what we have is inadequate compared to what other people have. Listen, you have everything that you need to fulfill the assignment and the mission that God has placed on your life. Again, it's not about your own success and your own sense of fulfillment according to the world's standards, but are you fulfilling what He created you to do? That's key. That is so key. Number two, what passions stir my heart? See, God has embedded His heart and eternity in our hearts. And the things that move our spirits, the issues, the causes, the activities that light a fire in our soul, these passions are often clues to our purpose. I often tie it to three emotions: the emotions of joy, the emotions of sadness, and the emotions of anger. Anything that invokes this within you is also pinpointing you towards what it is that He has in store for you, that He is actually asking you to act upon and to take movement on. If these things bother you, there's something you're supposed to do about this. You're not just supposed to sit on the sidelines and be a spectator. So listen to your passions, listen to the emotions of your heart, what you are stirred by, what you are moved by, because that is also an indication of what His purpose might be concerning your life. Number three, what breaks your heart? Sometimes our purpose is tied to the things that break our hearts, the injustices, the needs, the problems that we feel we've been called to address and deal with in this world. And number four, where do I see God at work in my life? Our testimony, our witness, our experiences. Pay attention to where God is moving in your life, what doors He's opening, what opportunities He's placing before you. I want to challenge you again, in our workbook, 21 Days to Connect with Destiny. You will find it. You will find a worksheet that literally spells out the word destiny and gives you the opportunity to work out what are the things that literally are God's signs and His pinpoints to what He has called you to, what He has destined you for. And take some time to just think about the dreams and the desires in your heart. Number two, your experiences in life. Number three, what are some of your successes, your skills, the strategies that you've developed over the last several years? What are some of your testimonies, the things that you've been through, the trials and the tribulations that you've walked through that you can help other people walk through because you lived through them, you walked through them? What are some of your, what does I stand for? Um, your interests. What are some of your passions? And what are some of um, the new things, the innovations, the strategies that God is giving you? Listen, yield, lean in. There is so much purpose and intention behind God's design of who you are. There's nothing about you that is a mistake. Every single thing about you has been originally intended by God, put together by God with design. So as you listen in to who He made you to be, instead of rejecting parts of who you are, God will show you who you are, what His purpose is. I want you to take some time this week to sit with these questions, write down your thoughts, pray about them, and ask God to reveal His purposes for your life. So the four questions again: what gifts has God given me? What passions stir my heart? What breaks my heart? Where do I see God at work in my life? Once you begin to gain clarity on your vision and purpose, it's time to start walking in it. This is where the rubber meets the road, where you take action, even if it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. You don't have to have the full picture and the whole 411 about what the vision is and what the strategy is. It takes one action at a time. For many of us, if we look at all the miracles in the Bible, it took an action for God to begin to unfold the rest of the vision, the rest of the plan to them. You have to take action and do one thing, something. There was a point in my life when I knew what God was calling me to do, but I was scared to step out in faith. in many instances, even with doing this She's Unleashed thing, y'all, if you knew me, you would know that I would never in a million years have envisioned myself doing a ministry for women. But I knew that this was something that God was calling me to do, specifically when the pandemic hit, to hold space for high performing, faith driven women, to hold a safe space for them to let down their armor and let down all expectations and just be themselves with no judgment, with no criticism. But y'all, it was something I was running away from because there were aspects of my own identity and my own self that I was rejecting. But once you take that step and you say yes to God and you walk in obedience, watch as God opens doors for you, just like it took the priests the first step of stepping into the Jordan for God to begin to shift the waters and move them into different directions and to pave a path in front of them so that not just them but others could walk through. It is going to take a step of faith and an action from you to begin to create moves for yourself and for others that will follow in the paths that you have forged in your obedience with God. It's not an easy journey, but once you take that first step, God will meet you right there. God will provide the strength. God will provide the resources. God will provide the guidance that you need to keep moving forward. So, what are some practical steps to do this? Start small. It doesn't have to be a major leap, it doesn't have to be a major move. Just start with what is in your hand. Use what God has given you. Do something. What is one small thing that you can do this week to move closer to your purpose, to move closer to walk in obedience before God in the things that He's called you to? Number two, seek God's guidance. Regularly ask God to guide your steps and give you the wisdom to make decisions that align with His will. Here's the thing, and we talked about this a little bit in the last episode. All it takes is a 1-degree shift. As we begin to walk with God day by day and ask God for His directions today, Lord, show me what your will and your plan and your agenda is for my life today. For many of us, we get so caught up in the big vision that we fail to realize that if we would just stick with God today, we will ultimately find ourselves exactly where God wants us to be. If we walk with God today, we don't have to worry about whether we are going to be out of alignment with Him. As long as we are connected to God and walking with Him like this, in obedience. Keyword is obedience. If we walk with Him today in obedience, we don't have to worry if we will end up in the wrong place. Because as long as I'm walking with Him, obeying Him today, I will find myself exactly where He wants me to be, in the center of His will. This is why Jesus said, I don't do anything, I don't say anything unless the Father tells me to do it. If we walk in that same manner every single day, you will find yourself exactly smack dab in the middle of His will for your life. Number three, stay connected to your vision, to His vision for your life. Keep your vision and your purpose at the forefront of your mind. For me personally, I have my vision written down and I also have it recorded in my own voice on my phone, and I try to listen to it every day. And let me tell you this, I haven't listened to it for a long time. Before this week, and every time I fail to keep the vision in front of me, every time I fail to keep that in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit, it is so easy to drift away. But keep the vision before you, keep it in the forefront of your mind. Make sure that you write it down, create a vision board, find a way to remind yourself of it, include it in your morning practices, the way you start your day, your routine, so that your day is literally, start with it at the beginning of the day, anchor it at the end of your day. Make sure that your day is anchored by vision, beginning and end. It will make sure that the activities and the things that you engage in, the conversations that you engage in throughout the course of your day are in alignment with His will for your life. Now, here, as we close this episode today, I want to remind you that being unleashed isn't just about breaking free. It's about stepping boldly into the life God has called you to. It's about living with purpose, passion, and a clear vision of where you are going. You've already begun this journey, and I believe that as you continue to seek God's vision for your life, you'll see amazing things unfold. This week, take some time to reflect on the key questions we discussed. Ask God to clarify His vision for your life and give you the courage to step into your purpose. And as always, feel free to share your journey with us on social media using the hashtag #SheIsUnleashed. Thank you for joining me today in this episode of the She is Unleashed podcast. Stay posted as we continue to dig into this whole notion of an unleashed life. Y'all, the book is being released next week. I'm trusting God and believing God for the miracles that will unfold as you dig into this book. Literally, I am going to be breaking down everything about what this means for the high performing, faith driven woman in leadership. How can we step into everything that God has for us and break free from all the chains that the enemy has been trying to use to keep us bound and keep us from walking in the fullness of what He created us for? If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who might need a little encouragement today. Remember, God has an incredible plan for your life, and as you step into it, you'll experience the fullness of His love and His power. We were created to live powerful, anointed lives, not lives that are defeated and where we feel weak and useless and powerless. Sister, God has a purpose for your life. There is a vision, there is a destination that He is wanting you to get to. But here's the thing, you don't have to do it alone. He wants to walk with you. So until next time, stay blessed and stay unleashed.